Well, I think that's really more of an Andrew question, okay? But I think what was that pick? 146. We thought he was good value at 146. I think we had the right people involved in the conversation. At the end of the day, that's Andrew Berry's call. Andrew made the call to pick Shedeur, just like who's going to start or what play we're going to call.
He could be speaking to the city of Cleveland as if to say, don't blame me for this one. That is the man that gave Deshaun Watson guaranteed $230 million, which right now is going down as arguably the worst.
Jimmy and Dee Haslam, owners of the Cleveland Browns, are coming out of the shadows, and they're not holding back. But it's not in a way you'd expect. They've got some serious disdain for Shedeur Sanders, and it's all starting to look pretty ugly. Instead of owning their decision to sign him, they're trying to push this narrative that they somehow took pity on Shedeur for even getting that shot. Yeah, you heard me right. They're trying to paint it like it was some kind of favor, not a smart move on their part. Now, Jimmy Haslam, he's out here talking up the Browns' great process when it comes to signing players. He's selling the idea that everything is methodical, everything is thought out. But here's the kicker. If you'd asked him just a day before about going after Shedeur Sanders, he would have told you, flat out, no way. So what changed? According to Haslam, just hours before they made the move, the decision was finally made to go for Shedeur. And once again, it was Andrew Berry, the Browns GM, who actually pulled the trigger on that call.
We have good process, okay? And if you'd have told me, let's see, we picked him on Saturday, right? Friday night driving home, y'all are going to pick Shedeur. I would say that's not happening. But we had a conversation early that morning, and then we had a conversation later that day. I think we had the right people involved in the conversation.
Now let's stop right there and think about that. If it was such a great process, why did it take until that morning to make the move? How much influence does Haslam really have over these big decisions? Is he just along for the ride, or is he pulling strings behind the scenes? And the bigger question, was this whole thing part of the plan from the start, or are they just scrambling to cover up some last-minute decisions? And if you thought this drama couldn't get any messier, just wait. Stephen A. Smith, who never holds back, absolutely went off on Jimmy Haslam's comments about Shedeur Sanders. And when I say he dropped a bombshell, I mean it. Stephen A. went straight for the jugular, saying, and I quote, "This man, Jimmy Haslam, was one of the key figures who made sure Shedeur Sanders fell to the 5th round." Now let that sink in for a second. According to Stephen A., this wasn't just a fluke. It wasn't just about Shedeur's draft stock or some random decision. No, Stephen A. claims that Haslam did it on purpose. And why? To send a message, not just to Shedeur, but to Deion Sanders. According to Stephen A., they weren't just trying to affect Shedeur's career, they were looking to hurt Deion, and what better way than by hurting his son?
And that had a lot to do with it. It was personal, and it wasn't some collusion that was going on. They didn't have to, because universally they felt, they watched the interviews, they saw the way Deion Sanders was speaking or whatever, and that's what broke his heart. I'm telling you what I know. It broke his heart because he knew there's no way that his son was going to fall to a 5th round if it wasn't for people that was taking shots at him.
Stephen A. didn't stop there. He made it crystal clear that this wasn't some accidental slip-up in the draft process. This wasn't about football decisions or draft strategy. No, this was personal. According to Stephen A., the entire goal was to send a message to Deion Sanders, and the plan was brutally simple. Hurt Deion by targeting his son, Shedeur. Now, let's be real. There's absolutely no logical reason for a talent like Shedeur Sanders to fall all the way to the 5th round. We're talking about a quarterback who's been turning heads, breaking records, and showing elite-level skills at Colorado. So why did he slide? Stephen A. makes the case that some people in the league were determined to make sure Shedeur's name wasn't called earlier, that he didn't get the respect he deserved. Stephen A. Smith wasn't about to let Jimmy Haslam off the hook that easily, especially after Haslam casually mentioned that he hadn't even considered signing Shedeur Sanders while driving back. Stephen made it crystal clear. This wasn't some offhand remark. This was part of a larger, calculated strategy to ensure Shedeur didn't get the opportunity he rightfully deserved. According to Stephen A., Haslam and others in the league weren't just playing the typical draft game. They were actively working against Shedeur Sanders, doing everything in their power to make sure he did not get signed. And Stephen wasn't holding back. He laid it out for everyone, saying, "You are not going to let it happen."
Understand what's going on here. That's why Haslam was in his car on a Friday talking about, I can't see it happening, because they weren't going to let it happen.
And it's not just Stephen A. Smith calling out the treatment of Shedeur Sanders. Louis Riddick is also weighing in, and he's got some serious concerns. Riddick didn't just stop at the draft. He made it clear that Shedeur wasn't just mistreated during the draft process, he's still being abused by the team management even now. According to Riddick, Shedeur isn't being given the opportunity he deserves, and he's not about to let the narrative that the young quarterback is being treated fairly slip by unnoticed. Riddick flat-out rejected the idea that Shedeur was getting an equal shot, calling it exactly what it was, a blatant misrepresentation of the situation. But what really stood out in his breakdown was a key detail that had somehow slipped under the radar of most commentators. Louis pointed out that Shedeur Sanders didn't even want his father, Deion Sanders, to come to training camp. Why? Because of how poorly he was being treated, getting just 4 reps a day. Riddick didn't hold back either. He straight up asked, "Is that fair?" And the answer, loud and clear, is no. No, it's not fair. No, it's not right. But Louis Riddick wasn't done yet. He went even further, pointing out that while Shedeur Sanders would get a chance to play in the preseason, the real issue here was the lack of reps he was getting with the team.
Reps the people who are going to play get. Now, that doesn't mean he's not going to play in the preseason. He is, but he's not getting the reps in practice. So what it really is happening is he's going to have to be like spectacular in the preseason games, okay? Because he's not getting the reps right now to practice the things he's going to do in the preseason games. And here's the other thing, number 2.
Riddick emphasized that despite those limited opportunities to step onto the field, Shedeur was being put in a nearly impossible situation. He would have to be extraordinary in those few moments, because he simply wasn't being given enough time or resources to build real chemistry with the team. Louis Riddick wasn't pulling any punches in his assessment. He made it crystal clear that players drafted this low, like Shedeur Sanders, typically don't make it to the first team unless they've got someone fighting for them, someone willing to go to bat and advocate for their opportunity. Without that, Riddick pointed out, those players are often left to fend for themselves, which is exactly what's happening to Shedeur right now. But Riddick's frustration really boiled over when he called out a major issue that's been flying under the radar. It's still unclear who was even responsible for bringing Shedeur's name up in the first place. Who made the decision to sign him? And then Louis Riddick laid down a harsh reality about the NFL system itself. He straight up admitted that there's no pure meritocracy in the league. As much as we like to think the best players get the best opportunities based solely on their talent, the truth is far messier. Riddick pulled no punches when he shared his experiences, saying he's seen players who were clearly better than others get completely ignored by coaches, not because they weren't capable, but because the coaches simply didn't want them or didn't have a personal connection with them.
So I can tell you this right now. If you don't have someone who's strongly advocating for you, don't tell me that the NFL is it's just a meritocracy and the best players play. BS. It's not the case. Okay, I've seen players, I've been in personnel meetings where people are getting killed who coaches just don't want. And they may be better than the people who are playing ahead of them. I've seen it happen.
Stephen A. Smith didn't hold back in his analysis of Shedeur Sanders' situation, diving straight into the uncomfortable truth that many are hesitant to address. He made it abundantly clear that what happened to Shedeur wasn't just about football. It was about something much bigger, something that reaches deep into the fabric of how the NFL operates. Stephen A. pointed out the glaring double standard in how players are treated, especially when it comes to race. He highlighted how players like Eli Manning, who famously declined to join certain NFL teams or put themselves in less than ideal situations, were given a pass, excused for their choices, and celebrated. Yet for Shedeur Sanders, a talented young quarterback with every reason to be excited about his opportunity, the narrative had been flipped. Instead of being seen as a promising talent, Shedeur became a problem. Shedeur Sanders' situation highlights how the entire system is stacked against him, from the moment he entered the NFL draft to now. The Cleveland Browns owners, like Jimmy Haslam, are distancing themselves from their own decisions, framing Shedeur's signing as a favor instead of recognizing his undeniable talent. Their lack of accountability sets the tone for how he's been treated. The NFL system too fails him. Coaches, scouts, and front offices should be evaluating talent objectively, but personal biases and power dynamics come into play. Shedeur, despite his skills, is being given limited opportunities, with few reps and no clear advocate. What makes it worse is the racial double standard. As Stephen A. Smith pointed out, players like Eli Manning got a pass for similar decisions, but Shedeur faces criticism and suspicion simply for being who he is. The system isn't just ignoring his potential, it's actively working against him. The combination of biased ownership, league politics, and racial inequality creates a perfect storm. Shedeur's story isn't just about football. It's about a broken system that prevents talented players from getting the opportunities they deserve. It's time for change, but the question remains, when will that change come? So, here's the big question. How long are we going to keep letting the system treat players like Shedeur Sanders this way? How many talented athletes will have their potential stifled because of biases, politics, or a lack of opportunity? Is it fair for someone like Shedeur, who's shown time and time again that he has the skills, to be held back just because he doesn't fit a certain narrative or background? What needs to change for players like Shedeur to finally get a fair shot? And what can we as fans, critics, and analysts do to make sure the system holds itself accountable? Let me know your thoughts, because this conversation needs to happen.